Have you ever talked to someone and when you mentioned that you are an investor in the stock market, you have been asked this?
Aren't there plenty of professionals out there who dedicate their life to earn money in the stock market? What makes you think that you can beat those guys at their own game?
I know, I have been asked this on multiple occasions and it's been an important topic. Can the amateur investors earn money while there are so called professionals in the same market? Could it even be so that the individual investors have the upper hand? In the book One Up on the Wall Street, the legendary investor Peter Lynch reveals how his amateur approach to investing has led him to become one of the most successful investors of all time. I will now present 5 of his greatest findings. Takeaway number 1: Why the individual investor can beat the market. Surely, the amateur doesn't stand a chance against the might of the Wall Street. Doesn't Wall Street have ton of analysts from the fanciest business schools working 80 hours every week to find a bargain stock? Surely, there can't be any left for amateurs, right? But according to Peter Lynch, this assumption is dead wrong. In fact, the professional investors has many disadvantages compared to the amateur. Here are few of them. Size. A successful money manager will naturally attract a lot of capital and more. Capital means less opportunities. For instance, a $10 billion fund cannot invest in a company with a market capitalization of $10 million dollars and expect that investment to have a meaningful impact on the fund overall performance. Mediocrity is the safest play. There is saying on the Wall Street that you will never lose your job losing your client money in an IBM, meaning that if you are just another sheep in the herd, you will get to keep your job. Remember that fund managers have their own agendas and that they too are employees with jobs that aren't guaranteed. There's a lot of explaining. Fund managers tend to spend about 25% of their time explaining to their various stakeholders about why they made certain decisions. Unfortunately, stocks aren't sympathetic enough to yield extra 25% for this increased effort. Capital is dependent on clients. As a fund manager is investing other people's money, other people are also deciding how much money the manager has at disposal. The issue is that these other people aren't savvy investors themselves. They tend to pull back their money during bear markets and put in more of it during bully, which is exactly the opposite of what one do. This leaves the manager with the following dilemma. He has lot of money to invest when everything is expensive and too little of it when everything is cheap. Does the individual investors have any of these disadvantages? No, not at all. In fact, the amateur investors often have a great advantage over the professionals, which we will discuss in the next takeaway. Takeaway number 2: If you like the store, chances are you will love the stock too. If you are a software engineer, a cashier at the local market, a professional musician, a surfer, a fast food addict, or a crazy cat lady, you have an edge over Wall Street. Wait, what? Let me explain this. We all have certain industries, products, and services that we know more about than the average person. Perhaps we know more about the fashion industry because we work at the local clothing store, or perhaps we know more about the gaming industry because we consume games ourselves as our primary leisure activity. The point is that we all have valuable information about the publicly listed companies through our everyday life. This is the information that Wall Street either doesn't know of yet or had to spend hundreds of hours of market research to realize. Peter Lynch famously said that if you like the store, chances are that you will love the stock. Think about it. Which product do you enjoy and use from the publicly listed companies? Here's a list of some of mine. Spotify, an awesome music streaming service which I use for 1 to 2 hours a day. I love to use it when I work out and I have spent about 1000 rupees during the last year. Pepsi, the summer new flavor Pepsi Lime was released in India and I have been a complete addict of it lately. I probably drink 3 of them every week or so. So I spend more than 10,000 rupees every year. Amazon, I have probably been their best customer of 2020 as I buy all the books that I need for this channel from there. Not only that, but I also prefer buying both the Kindle and the audio if possible, as I have found that I can finish the book in half the time that way. On a yearly basis, I spend $1,500 or more for this service. When you are looking for investment opportunities this way, you must always remember to check how much the product or service that you enjoy affect the bottom line for the company. For example, sure, I am an addict of the new Pepsi Lime flavor. I admit it. But let's say that the product only makes up 2% of the company total profit. Then it doesn't really make sense for me to buy the Pepsi stock based on me loving the Pepsi Lime. Takeaway number 3, the sixth category of stock investments. All investment opportunities aren't created equal. To lump them all together and treat them accordingly would be a foolish and not so profitable a strategy. Peter Lynch argued that there are different categories of stock investments. These are first slow growers. This company is typically large and operates in a mature industry. The growth of this company is expected to be in low single digits or percentages. If you invest in such a company, you will typically do it for the dividends. Lynch doesn't really like this category of stocks too much, as he thinks that if the company isn't going anywhere fast, neither will its stock price. Second one is the stalwarts. Stalwarts are the in-betweeners. They are not exactly the stock market's equivalent to cheetahs, but they are no snails either. For instance, if Amazon can keep up its revenue growth rate of 30% per year for the next 10 years, its revenue will be equal to the GDP of France in 2029. Is this reasonable? Third one is cyclicals. Cyclicals are the companies whose revenue and profit rise and fall with the business cycle. Typically, they produce services or products that the consumer will postpone consumption of it the times of the financial uncertainty. An example is the automakers. People don't necessarily that to switch cars every 6 years or so, even if they prefer to. Timing is everything here. If you can identify early signs of the booming or busting cycle, you will have the advantage. Fourth one is turnarounds. The turnarounds are the potential fatalities. Companies with declining earnings and or problematic balance sheet. If the company doesn't go down and instead manages to be flourish once again, stock owners are rewarded thereafter. An interesting characteristic about the turnarounds is that their ups and downs aren't as related to the market in general as the rest of the categories. A situation where a company has gotten a temporary bad reputation is usually a profitable turnaround case. Fifth one is asset plays. Situation where the value of the company indicates that the market has missed out on something valuable that the company owns are the asset plays. Such undervalued assets could be real estate, patents, natural resources, subscribers, or even company losses, as these are deductible from the future earnings. Benjamin Graham was a strong advocate to this approach. He famously looked for the companies where the value of the asset were higher than the market capitalization of the stock. Then he just wanted until the stock market realized its mistake and corrected it. The six categories are explained in much greater details in the book. When using these categories, one must understand that the companies can belong to more than one of them at once. Also, companies don't stay in the same category forever. Take McDonald's. For example, it's gone from being a fast grower to a stalwart to an asset place to slow grower. Takeaway number 4, 10 traits of the 10 bagger. A 10 bagger is the expression that Peter Lynch uses to describe a stock which has appreciated to 10 times your purchasing price. If you have a few of these, you in your investing lifetime, you will become a legend. Different types of stocks must be treated differently, as stated in the previous takeaway, but there are also similarities. Here are 10 positive traits for a stock, regardless if it's an asset place or a fast grower. Number 1 is the company name is dull, or even better, ridiculous. Such companies tend to be overlooked. The pros of Wall Street will think twice before bragging about their recent investment in Moyland and Pineapple Company Incorporated. It just sounds way too ridiculous. Second one is it does something dull. Third one is it does something disagreeable. Better yet than doing something dull is to do something disagreeable. Swedish Match is a good example, which is the producer of the Swedish tobacco snus. Fourth one is institutions doesn't own it and it is not followed by any analysts. Such companies haven't been discovered yet by the big boys, which gives them an extra potential upside. Fifth one is there is something depressing about it. The Burial Company Services Corporation is a classic example. Sixth one is the company industry isn't growing. In the high growth industries, thousands of people are constantly thinking about how they can grab a part of the market share. Stalling industry, on the other hand, aren't as prone to the competition. Seventh one is it's got a niche. There are the companies which modes that Warren Buffett is famously looking for. Eighth one is it is recurring revenues. The product is a subscription or something that is consumed so that the consumers are forced to return for more. Ninth one is insiders are buying. Insiders know more about the company than anyone else. When they are buying, you can be pretty sure that, at the very least, the company isn't going bankrupt soon. 10th one is the company is buying back its shares. If the company has faith in itself, it should invest in itself. Peter Lynch prefers share buyback for dividends. Takeaway number 5. 5 traits of the reversed 10 bagger. And of course, there are also general don'ts that you don't want to see in any type of company that you are investing in. First one is it's a hot industry. As previously mentioned, everyone is looking for the ways to get into the hot industries competition. It's a typical a bad omen for the profits. Second one is it's the next something. Beware when someone expresses that it's the next Amazon, the next Facebook, the next Google or similar. Usually it's not. Third, the company is diversifying. Some call it diversification, but the Lynch likes to refer to it as diversification. If the company is acquiring other companies in unrelated industries, stay away from it. Fourth one is it's dependent on a single customer. Some companies are relying on one customer for a significant share of profit. Usually, this is a weak bargaining position of it, and the company can potentially be squeezed by this only customer. Fifth one is it's a whisper stock. There are the long shots, often thought of as being the brink of doing something miraculous, like curing every type of cancer, completely removing any addiction, or creating world peace. Thanks a lot. If you liked my videos, then please like, share and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also follow me on the Instagram. I can give the link below.